Hi, I'm Sarah from Olive Road, London, which is a vintage fabric shop. I've organised 2 fabric swaps at Craft Central in London's Docklands, and I'm so pleased with how they both went. Thanks to the friendly and collaborative nature of sewists, plus a little bit of organisation, and they went really well. Yvette from Stash Hub helped me organise the swap in January 2024, and together we've pulled some tips to help others organise their own swap. There was so much unwanted fabrics on offer, so more people that host swaps, the better it is for the environment, and less will be thrown into landfill. So why not organise your own swap with these tips? So tip number 1 is to actually work backwards and plan your waste. There is a lot left over, so we wanted to make sure that it would all go to a good home before we even started. So we contacted local sewing charities and sewing community groups and asked them along to the event, and just said they could take what they wanted and they didn't need to bring items to swap. Maybe you live close to a college that runs fashion classes, or there's a charity that teaches people to sew. The larger lengths of fabric above 2 meters are really useful to these groups, and then they can use them for dressmaking. The smaller pieces under 1 meter are useful if they're 100% cotton. So we had a local community group who used them for quilting, and also creating like these really beautiful cotton hearts for a children's charity called From Me to You Hearts. And the non-cotton fabrics under 1 meter are problematic and they're quite difficult to use. So this is like polyester and viscose, the kind of more slippy fabrics. So can you encourage your friends to use up their scraps? Have you got some ideas? I've got lots of free tips and scrap busting patterns over on my website, and I'll put the link in the comments below. Small scraps left over from dressmaking, like the really small pieces that you get from your overlocker, or the weird shaped pieces, we put those into large textile bags and they were recycled with a company called First Mile. Now, First Mile will only work with businesses, so we were able to tag on to Craft Central's contract that they already have with First Mile and pay for the bags on top. So if you're not able to dispose of scraps responsibly, then it's probably best to ask people to bring pieces over 50 centimetres for 100% cotton and over 1 metre for non-cottons. You might even want to say 2 metres. As I said, we did have a lot left over, so I'd already planned ahead, and there is a amazing fabric emporium or a craft emporium called the Big C in a place called Wyndham, just not far from Norwich in Norfolk. And what I did was just filled up my tiny little car and went up there with everything and dropped it off, and I'll show some photos here. And they were really pleased, and it means that they can sell all of these fabrics and haberdashery and use them. The money then goes to a cancer charity, so it was really worthwhile and they were very happy. So it was a good result all around. So my tip number 2 is to keep it simple. Now, I visited quite a few clothes swaps over the years, so it's the same concept as the fabric swap that you're using, taking your clothes instead. Is they tend to issue tokens, so you queue up at the door. Depending on how many garments you have, then you get tokens what to take. I went to a really good clothes swap called the Fat Positive Clothes Swap in Deptford in South London, and this is where I got this dungaree dress. I was very happy with it. It's organised by Patsy, and she told me to just keep it simple, don't issue any tokens. She said they have loads of clothes left over at the end. So people came along and they came in, dropped their items at the relevant tables that we'd already labelled up, and then they took what they wanted. We had a motto that said, please only take what you can use, and so you're not taking lots, and it just created a really good atmosphere. And we also didn't want to alienate people who maybe didn't have anything to swap. So tip 3 is about being organised. So thinking ahead, thinking about maybe what's in your own stash. and then creating categories from that. Or you can copy out. I just printed some posters, but you can just handwrite some signs, stack them with a bit of blue tack over where the tables were, and then so individual tables or baskets, whatever you have to hand, then that would be where the item would go. It depends on how big you want your swap to be. We had 200 people, so it was big and it was busy, and that's why we ended up with a lot of fabric left over. But maybe you just want to organise it with some friends. It doesn't have to be a big event, and just to get started. One other point about being organised is we ask people to label their items in advance. So with the fabric, we ask them to measure it, which you can do in a really simple way, and label it up. So you could use a sticker, a little luggage tag, or just a piece of brown tape and write on it. And it meant that things were a little bit tidy. They did get a little bit full at the end, but generally people were able to see what was available, and the fibre content, and maybe even what shop it came from, if you remember. So lots of people did that, and it did help. And also it kind of creates it's nice to rummage. You want to come to a swap and have a rummage. So we didn't make everything really regimented, but organised enough that people could shop from the swap. So tip 4 is finding a venue. Now, if it's just you and some friends, maybe, one of your homes would be enough. I'm really lucky that my studio is at Craft Central and I get use of the gallery area. But maybe a local community centre, a church hall. You just have to be conscious of the cost. So there will be a cost associated with that. And the other thing that you do want from a venue like this is use of tables. So I explained about us putting the fabric on different tables and different categories. So it's really useful if the place that you've booked also has tables that you can use. And tip number 5 is about timings. So how long do you want your swap to be? If it is with a few friends, maybe you'd like an evening swap and have a few glasses of wine along with it. Or if it is in a local community centre, then maybe like a few hours. So ours was 11 till 3, and I was lucky enough that I was able to set up the day before. But if you're paying for a venue, then you will need to set up that morning. So you'll have to pay for the whole day, but you might want to just start your swap at maybe 11 or 12, so you've got time in the morning to set the tables up, etc. And we finished at 3. I tend to find with events 3 o'clock people want to start going home, and you need time to clear up. There is a lot of mess, and it does take a long time to clear up, so you need to factor that in. We didn't have a drop-off hour, so what that means is sometimes you can go to a clothes swap and they ask you maybe between 10 and 11 to drop off your items, and they might check it in, give you tokens, and then people are able to come back and swap between 11 and 3, say, so after the drop-off hour. We chose not to do that, mostly because like where Craft Central is, it's very residential. There's not a coffee shop to go and sit and wait, and it was cold. I didn't want people waiting outside. The other reason is we already had a lot of items to open with, so I'd had people donate to me before, and I had some of my own items. So I was already able to lay out fabric and haberdashery before anyone arrived. So the new people that came like at 11 o'clock, they already had things to swap. And the other thing we did was we provided a pop-up cafe, so people could buy drinks and snacks, but you might want to offer some free refreshments or part of the ticket price. And we want to encourage people to stay for a long time, so they could go back to the tables and more things might have arrived, and also just to make it social, so people chatted about sewing and what they're up to, and it made it a really nice atmosphere and social event. So that was important to us too. So the next tip, I think we're up to 6, is about budget. So hire a venue like a church hall, for example, then you do need to factor in the cost of that. And if table hire is not included, you'll need to hire in some tables. Did you want to include some refreshments, or you might sell them separately? you need to market your event. If it's more than just a few friends, you need to tell people about it. So you might need to add in some advertising fees, you know, maybe an Instagram advert, for example. Now we chose to put our event on Eventbrite, so, and they do charge about a third. So our ticket price was £3 and they took £1 of that. So it's just something to be aware of. And again, we paid for textile recycling bags. They were expensive. So you'll have to factor that in if you're going to offer that. You will need insurance. You can just get insurance for one day and it's very reasonable. Travel costs, and if you're going to pay anyone to come and help you. So they're all just a few examples of things you might need to factor in. And then once you've added all that up, I'd also add in a 15% contingency, because there's always something extra you have to pay for. And once you've added all that up, worked out how many people you want to come, then you know how much you want to charge for a ticket. And if there is money left over, then you can always donate that to a local charity if you want to, or maybe you want to keep it to help you pay for another swap another time. So obviously that choice is yours. Tip 7 is about marketing. So how are you going to tell people about your event? Maybe you've got a local sewing group on Facebook you could share. You can then ask your friends to share. We did do this, and between Yvette and I, we did lots of Instagram posts. We created content around why it's good to destash, how to do it, give some tips on maybe organising your fabric stash. There's lots of good resources out there, including there's a podcast called Check Your Thread. It's worth checking that out, and Zoe, who runs the podcast, she has lots of tips on how to destash your fabric, which I'll also put that in the notes. Eventbrite was really useful to us because, as I said, I'd run the event before. I was able to contact the people from last time to let them know it's going ahead, and I think a lot of people are used to using Eventbrite, so they see the event come up if it's in their area. When it actually came to the event, they have an app. We was able to kind of like zap people in the ticket, so we knew who came, and we was able to contact them afterwards to say, you know, for example, this is what we did with the fabric left over, and thank you for coming, etc. The other thing that worked for us is to actually contact people direct. So I sent some emails and some Instagram DM messages to local sewing groups, explain what's going on, and just said you might like to come, and lots of them did, which was brilliant. So word of mouth is definitely the best form of marketing, and just backed up with some social media if you use social media. If not, then maybe some posters, or you could even contact your local newspaper and get them involved in helping you. You know, just make the points that you're saving a lot of textiles from landfill. The leftovers are going for charity. Maybe you might have a donation for charity in your ticket price. So there's loads of positives you can talk about that get them interested. So my last tip is to have fun. It was a really fun day. I won't deny it was a lot of work, so there was a lot of building up to the event, like I explained about marketing, and you know, making sure we've got everything organised in advance so that we had enough people to come and take fabric at the end, or have somewhere to donate it at the end. And so that took a good couple of months. But our event was much bigger, and it was 200 people. So if you start small, it won't take that long. And on the day, everyone who came was just lovely, excited to be there, really happy to have somewhere to donate their items responsibly, knowing that somebody else was going to use them. We even had people sharing like bigger pieces of fabric, asking for scissors to cut them in two, and you know, they didn't know each other. So it was a really just warm, friendly event, which we encouraged, and we're so happy that happened. So that's the last tip. It's just to have fun, and don't worry about the hard work. It's worth it. It gives you a nice warm feeling inside, so it's worth it. So good luck. I really hope that you're able to organise your own swap. Please let me know how you get on. and yeah, just go for it.